The most important things that I like to touch on whenever I'm training folks is the nonverbal aspect of the training, specifically proxemics and kinesics, because your proximity control, the way you move your body, your positioning in the room when you're dealing with students with these behavior needs is very important because as you learned in the crisis development model, behavior influences behavior. So, when you're thinking about personal space, you need to think about those factors that our kids come in with, their culture, their gender, relationship, issues that they may have gone through. Um, you know, at what point would you want someone, to stop, if they're coming towards you? You also need to be respectful for to your students and think about, their boundaries and their personal space, because generally, that 1.5 to 3 feet line is where you kind of draw the line whenever you want someone to stay out of your space. Your body language is the way you hold and move your body. So if you're working with a student with behavioral difficulties, you're going to want to think about the way you carry yourself, because if you approach someone thinking about your facial expressions, and if you have a really angry face and you approach a person, how are they going to perceive your actions coming toward them? So the importance of body language needs to be emphasized, essentially, because um, you know like I said before, behavior influences behavior. So if you approach a student that's already anxious or already getting to, start to be amped up a little bit, their anxiety is probably just going to increase because they may perceive you as a threat. Especially, if you have your hands on your hips, or, you've got your finger pointed at them, or, you have a really angry look on your face. You really need to think about how you carry yourself, because you should always approach your students with a calm and understanding perspective, because if they are starting to get anxious or upset or frustrated, it's important to hear them out and see what's going on with them, instead of coming at them, already you're frustrated too, so try to understand from their perspective what's going on. The supportive stance is so helpful because you're turned to the side, and it's hard to do it here, but
Right.
your palms are open, your a third of your body is exposed if you're turned at an angled position, because although it might not be comfortable if you are struck, the your knee, your leg, your hip, your arm, you're not exposing your vital organs to one of those blows if that were to occur. And that's one of the reasons that that's so important, safety. But it also communicates respect. If your palms are open, you're not hands on your hips, you don't have your arms crossed, you don't appear frustrated. If you have that calm, cool, collected appearance, it can really influence the way behaviors will continue.
Yeah.
The way you communicate with your students is very important. So, this goes for those nonverbals, like we've discussed, your body language, your stance, your proxemics, but also your tone, your volume, your cadence. That is also very important, because, two sentences that are said can have the exact same words, but they could convey completely different meanings. You tell someone they look nice, the way you say that, whether you're sarcastic or sincere, comes through with your tone. And especially, your volume, if you're shouting at a student, it's very apparent, the way you feel, your communication with them. Um, and it really depends on the student and the situation, because, if, as a teacher, I didn't tend to raise my voice very often unless it were a dangerous situation. If I had a student that would run whenever he became frustrated, the student with autism, and he would go straight for the door. And our school was differentiated into pods, and so while it was a gated school, he could easily run to the gate to the road, and so I would have to raise my voice to tell him to stop. But if you are, in a small classroom environment, a lot of times raising your voice isn't going to be effective. And it's also more respectful to the student to get down on their level and, have that, whisper conversation with them or step out into the hall, just to try to understand what's going on. And also your cadence, the rhythm or rate of your speech is really important, especially working with students with disabilities, because, they might have, auditory processing or other processing issues, and so it's really important that they are able to understand the things that you say, and to give them processing time, because especially if you're frustrated, as adults we might need a second to think before we speak or think before we act, and the same goes for our kids. If we're giving them a directive, it's really important to give them time to recognize and process what it is that we're asking them to do.